Okay, let's look at composite functions. So the diagram shows what happens when you apply one function g of x after another function f of x. So the domain input of f of x and the range, the output of f of x, is going to come to the input of g of x, and that is the output of g. So g of f of x. A little confusing. So the output from the first function becomes the input for the second function. When you combine two functions, as in the diagram, you form a composite function. So let's look at what they're talking about. Maybe an example can help. Well, let's look at the key concept first. So it says the composition of function g with function f is written as g composed of f. That little symbol means composed, and is defined as g composed of f of x equals g of f of x. The domain of g composed of f consists of x values in the domain of f, for which f of x is in the domain of g. So g composed of f is like g of f of x. So you evaluate f of x first, then use f of x as input for g. So let's look at the problem that they have here. So it says f of x equals x minus 5 and g of x equals x squared. So what is g composed of f negative 3? So there are two ways we can do this problem. Whoops. So let's write it down. We have f of x equals x minus 5 and g of x equals x squared. And they want us to find g composed of f of negative 3. Now I'm going to show you not the way that the book is showing first. And so that means g of f of negative 3. So first, I'm going to put my g, and everywhere I have an x, I'm going to put my f of x. So that's going to be x minus 5 squared, which is just x squared minus 10x plus 25. That's one way of writing it, right? A much simpler way of writing this, though, would be to just go ahead and then I plug in the negative 3 of that also. So let's do that. G of f of negative 3 is going to give me 9 plus 30 plus 25. Okay, so that's going to give me 39 plus 25, which is 464. The next way, or the easier way to do this, is to first plug it in for f. So we'll do f of negative 3, which is negative 3 minus 5, which is negative 8. Then I'm going to plug in this negative f into my g of x. So g of negative 8 gives me negative 8 squared, which is 64. So g composed of f of negative 3 equals 64. So both ways we got 64. You can choose which way is easiest. I believe this way is a little easier, a little simpler, but this kind of shows us the steps and the things that we did to get to it. So they got 64 and they got, they did do two ways. I should have looked, I'm sorry, I misspoke. So method 1, method 2. Let's do one on our own. So it says, what is f composed of g of negative 3? So we're going to go in the opposite direction this time. So let me erase what I have. So f of x equals x minus 5, and g of x equals x squared. And this time, I want f composed of g of negative 3. So we'll plug in negative 3 first. So we'll do f of g of negative 3. And so I get f of, when I plug in negative 3 for g, so I get negative 3 squared, right? And I get f of 9. Now plug in 9 for here. I get 9 minus 5, which is 4. So I hope that this helps.